Hi everyone, I am Grace from Gardening for Joy. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to make greeting cards using dried flowers. And more specifically, we'll look at making holiday greeting cards. Now I'm going to kind of arrange the tutorial in three sections. First, we'll look at the supplies you need and getting everything ready in order to actually construct and design your greeting card. Then we'll look at the process of gluing your plant material to the card. And then finally, we'll look at finishing the card. So with that, I'm going to adjust the camera and we will get started. So let's take a look at the materials that you need to gather in order to make some greeting cards using pressed flowers. So of course you need flowers, pressed plant material, and so that's what I have here in front of me. In particular, I like using the leaves of an arborvitae. They tend to work really nicely when making a Christmas tree or a wreath, which are really the two designs that we'll focus on. So arborvitae leaves are good. Um, these arborvitae leaves I pressed in a wooden flower press, and I left them there for about 3 weeks. They came out really nice. You can also certainly use a flower press if you're pressed for time. Microwave flower press really work great. I've got an assortment of flowers here that I'm going to use. I have some leaves from the fall, and then again a few other flowers on this side. So certainly you need your pressed flower material. Then you need some type of cardstock. Um, I got this particular version. What I liked about it is it's really meant to put a picture in. You can slide a picture in so it has a little border on it. And I just thought that was really nice. I like the idea of that border. It kind of frames the design. So you need some type of cardstock. You need glue, right, that you're going to use to glue the flowers on. I like to use Mod Podge in a matte finish, so you need that. Of course, you need a tweezer. I like these long nose tweezers. They make it a lot easier to handle the plant material. Um, Pencil is always handy to have. A ruler is handy to have. Um, a scissor is also good to have by you. Some scotch tape is good to have, and I'll talk about what that's used for. And then sometimes I also use a popsicle stick to help me hold the plant material in place. All right, so those are the supplies that you're going to need before you go ahead and get started. So what I want to talk about is how I prepare the plant material. And let me just bring this right here over to the center. So you can see I've got a few different stems of the arborvitae, and the way I use the arborvitae is I simply use my tweezers and I come and pull the individual little leaflets off of the arborvitae. And these are the pieces that I'm actually going to use when I construct my Christmas tree and my wreath. So, very simple. You just be careful because, they can be brittle, but you're just going to pull off these little pieces. Okay, so that's easy enough. Um, Now, if you think about a wreath or you think about a Christmas tree, it has ornaments on it, and so we're going to use plant material to make those ornaments. And what I like to do with plant material, and so I got a few different pieces. So this is actually a zinnia that was pressed. And what I'm going to do with the zinnia, similar to what I did with the arborvitae, is I'm just going to pull off the individual petals of the flower. Okay, and I'm just going to pull those off. Again, a process that you really need to be gentle with. And I'm going to put them just down, ready to use. Right, so I tend to use the petals of a flower. Again, here's another very delicate type of flower that, again, I'm just going to go ahead and pull the individual petals off that flower so that they are ready for me to use when I construct either my tree or my wreath. Okay. Have another really delicate, I think this was a phlox, I'm pretty sure, flower. And so again, I can try to pull each one of these little leaves, each one of these petals, I should say, off the main flower. So important to prepare your plant material ahead of time. So we've got our supplies, we've got our cardstock, we've got our plant material ready to go. Let me just show you the designs that we're going to focus on. So one is a Christmas tree, and you can see how I use the arborvitae leaves, and then you can see how I use some of the flower petals to form ornaments on the tree. So that's one. And then, another design is just a simple wreath. Again, you can see how I use different plant material on the particular wreath. Okay, so the next thing that you're going to do in order to prepare, right, is you need to do a little bit of measuring on whatever your cardstock is going to be. So that's why I mentioned earlier that you need a ruler. So I'm going to measure my cardstock, and so I've got, it's 3 inches by, let's see here, it's 3 inches by 4¼ inches. And so when I do my Christmas tree, I'm going to do it when I do my Christmas tree, I'm going to do it up and down on the cardstock. However, when I do the wreath, I'm going to do it where it opens from the top as opposed to opens from the side. So for my Christmas tree, I want the stem to be pretty much in the middle of this particular card. So I measured. I know that if it's 3 inches, then I'm going to go, the center is about 1½ inches. And so I'm just going to mark that. So I know exactly where my stem is going to be. So that's how I just with a little dot prepare for my Christmas tree. And then for the wreath, I'm just going to use anything that has some type of a circle on it. So this is just a plastic container. Once again, I'm going to measure, and I'm going to actually try to find the center of this particular cardstock, right? So that my wreath will be right smack in the center. So 4¼ so that's going to give me 2 1/8. And then this is again 3, so this is going to give me 1½ So my center is right about there. So I just have a little dot that gives me my center. I'm going to place my cup right in the center. And then I'm just going to draw my circle. Doesn't have to be a perfect circle, just has to be, pretty much a bit of a guide so that you know how you're going to do your wreath. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and construct our Christmas tree. I forgot to mention, I like to use a paintbrush to apply the glue. So I'm going to show you 2 different methods for gluing plant material to the cardstock. One method is I have my stem here, which is going to be the stem of my tree, which is the very first thing I'm going to do. And I can just put little dots of glue all along the stem. At the top, I like to usually leave a few leaves at the top of the tree, at the top of the stem that I'm particularly using. And then using the dot that I made as a guide, I'm going to place my Christmas tree stem right in the center of the card, and then just hold it down for a second to get the glue to stick. I mentioned a popsicle stick. Sometimes I find it a lot easier to hold my plant material down with a popsicle stick than with my hands because it tends to stick to my hands. All right, so the stem is in place. Now we're going to form the branches of the tree. And there's two ways to do this, and both work. So one way is to just put the glue directly on the cardstock because the cardstock is very, very forgiving and the glue is going to dry perfectly, perfectly clear, right? And so I'm going to pick up what's really going to be a branch on my tree and I'm just going to place it down. I'm going to do the same thing with another branch on my tree. And as I mentioned, sometimes I just like to use a popsicle stick as opposed to my hand. Now, the other method that you can use is similar to what I showed you with the tree trunk, is simply placing dots of glue directly on the leaf and then taking it and gluing it onto the cardstock. All right. So again, you don't need a lot of glue. Just take little dots of glue. And you can glue it right on the cardstock. I try to get the little stems as close to the stem of the tree as possible. Now let me just go back and do it the other way. This time I'll just paint some glue on here. And, you know, I really think it's your preference. You know, if you find one way a little bit easier than the other, sometimes I think I find it a little bit easier to just paint the glue kind of directly on the card and then place the plant material on top of the glue that's there. I find it works a little bit quicker. All right, so I am going to go ahead and finish gluing the tree and then I'll come back and show you how we put the ornaments on. Okay, so I have completely finished gluing all of the leaves onto the Christmas tree. So that's what our Christmas tree looks like right now. And so now I'm going to put the ornaments on it. And so I'm going to start with the top of my tree and I'm going to actually put this pretty flower at the top of the tree. Um, so in this particular case, I am going to put the glue directly on the flower because I think it's just going to be a little bit easier to hold that way. And again, you know, as you start doing this, you'll figure out what works best for you. So there at the top of the tree, I have whether I consider it a star or whatever, but it's at the top of my tree. And now I'm going to put little ornaments up and down the branches of the tree. And for this piece, I am going to go ahead and put the glue right on the leaves. And I'm going to kind of stick with this pink theme here, if you will. And remember, I prepared all of the little petals of the leaves ahead of time, right? So that I would have them ready for me. You can see one little piece kind of got away from me there. We're going to go maybe, and you know, placement is where whatever you want, you know, whatever you think looks perfect for whatever you're creating. Just my advice is just that you be as careful as you can because they're very delicate. So that is the completed Christmas tree. How pretty is that, right? Really pretty. So I'm going to put that aside for a moment and let's go ahead and look at the wreath. So we have our cardstock, right, which has the circle in it. And what I'm going to do in this particular case is I'm just going to put a layer of glue all around the circle that I had roughly drawn on here. And then I actually need a little bit more of these leaves, so I'm going to just get a few off here. You can see how easy this is for these to come off, right? And then I'm just going to get started with placing these on the wreath. And so there, as simple as that, we have the outline already of the wreath there. And for my wreath, I am going to, at the top, I'm going to use a red flower. I'm going to pull off 2 petals off this red flower. And similar to what I did on the Christmas tree, when I did the petals, I'm going to go ahead and glue each of the individual petals. Put glue on each one of these. However, I am going to do that one at a time. I'm going to put it right at the top. A little bit of glue on there, but that's perfectly fine. So you can see, there's my wreath. And I can continue to decorate around the wreath if I want to. I can add a few more ornaments, so to speak, using the flowers, or I can leave it exactly as it is. So that is really the second part of the video, really about constructing your cards. And so I'm going to now move on to what I'm going to call the third part of the video, which is finishing your cards. And so I have a couple of cards that I worked on yesterday. I have a wreath and I have the wreath and I have the Christmas tree. And so I'm going to get a brush that's a little thicker. I mean, the width wise is more like, it's probably more about a 1/2 inch, probably. And all I'm going to do, I'm just going to seal the card using the glue. Let me just make sure this is up or you can see it and how I'm gluing it. And, I generally try to go in the direction of the plant material. This is just going to, remember, you're going to be putting these in an envelope and hopefully sending them to somebody who will enjoy them. Each one of these is a beautiful piece of art that could actually be framed. But all you're doing is, you're sealing with a layer of glue all the plant material that you've placed on your design. It will all dry perfectly clear. You may want to seal it twice. Sometimes I like to give it 2 sealings. Wait until it completely dries, right? But this is the final step. And wait until your first coat dries before you go ahead and do this. Doesn't mean you have to wait a whole day, but give it an hour to dry or so before you come in and do the sealing coat. So might not look like it's going to dry clear, but it will dry perfectly clear. And then you have something that's preserved that won't be damaged when the person who you send it to receives it. It should be preserved a little bit longer. But as I mentioned, these are beautiful pieces of art that you can frame. Also, the same method can be applied with other flowers. Here's where I glued a beautiful sunflower onto a card. Here's where I did some Russian sage on a card. So again, this method can be used for any type of plant material. Just happens to be the holiday season, so I thought I would demonstrate using a few different holiday designs.